This is my first video that I've done in a while since Christmas break, and I'm just here to tell you that I'm coming back to Japan very soon. Right now, I'm really packing up and making sure that everything in this dorm goes because we'll be moving to the second year dorm, and it's a blessing to have this whole dorm room open to myself. But it is incredibly hot here right now, so sorry if I started a little bit because the heat wave is incredibly hot. I mean, the sun is completely down, and it is still hot. Oh my god. But anyway, this video is just for me to show you my comic book and graphic novel collection, because since I come here to America, oh man, I couldn't just take the privilege to finally get all these graphic novels and comic books that I kept missing out every time I see something new on the internet that keeps bragging about how awesome these comic books and graphic novels are, and all I had to do was just wait for it to come by mail, or just wait till someone I know actually got a hold of it, and I have to basically just, borrow it from them. But, it's been a huge privilege to finally take advantage of all these comic books that I always wanted to get. Some of them are incredibly rare, some of them are cheap, and I just took them out of guilty pleasure and the sake that I just wanted to read it, because we don't have any television in this school or this dorm. All I could do was just pretty much read these comic books out of inspiration and entertainment purposes. So without further ado, let's start with the comic books, and then I'll show you the graphic novel collection that I've got since I came here to America. Alright, let's start out. Okay, here's my comic book collection. Tell you the truth, I collected more graphic novels than I ever did comic books, because comic books, they're only just pieces of the story. Graphic novels are from one story from beginning to the end, which I do appreciate. So, without further ado, let's start out with this one. Here it is. Minimum Carnage Omega. Oh, let me turn on this lamp. Alright, does it look better? Anyway, this is Minimum Carnage Omega. It just has Carnage on it, and I grew up with Carnage. It was one of the first comic book villains I've seen when I was getting into Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. From playing the video games to jump into the comic book scene. It's okay. Doesn't have the original Spider-Man. I think it's the Scarlet Spider-Man. I missed out a lot because, a lot of things has happened since I've been living in Japan. It's okay. At least we got a chance to see Carnage in action. Alright. Now, here's something interesting that I just stumbled across that I couldn't help myself but to collect. It's called the Irresistible series. Well, I got issues 1 and 2, but all I know about the series is about that there's this guy that just is literally attractive to women, and no matter what he does, there's always women that's always trying to seduce him, trying to get to a fast relationship, and also trying to get to a long-term relationship. No matter what he does, women can't ignore him. And as a result, for all the women that he's got involved with, they basically he tried to get the girl of his dreams, and once he gets the girl of his dreams, more girls try to get into him, and then what became his girlfriend became psychologically depressed and at best suicidal. But may I remind you that this is pretty adult, because you'll be seeing a lot of pornographic and sex materials and a lot of swearing, so I only recommend this to mature readers. Okay, now this one, I'm really glad that it's finally released, because this is actually one of my favorite artists in the comic book industry. He transformed from mainstream comic books, and then he went down to graphic novels and independent freelancing comic books. I couldn't resist it. It's Tom Mandrake, one of my favorite, artists in the comic book industry, and this is his work, To Hell You Ride. Pretty interesting. It's a suspenseful thriller, crime thriller, I believe, where it's about a Native American that's sent to the job to actually find this missing girl. And as far as I can go with the story, because you really need to get this. This is probably one of the best stories that's been told in comic books in years. That's saying a lot, considering that we have a lot of bad stories that Marvel has been releasing out. And what does DC have? Batman, of course, and also Animal Man, and you can talk about it in the comment section right below in the forums. But here's something interesting. Tom Mandrake has made The Hell You Ride, and his daughter Sean Mandrake. She made the Kill of the Night. I got an autograph by her, and it's really cool. Oh, I almost forgot. I also got a Mandrake. I got an autograph by Mandrake right over here. Oh man, doesn't it feel like a privilege to have your all-time hero to actually, make your sign his autograph and made your copy much more valuable? Oh man, this is good stuff. All right, this one's Epics. I keep seeing this a lot in the Comic-Con, and it was just pretty interesting to me because Fernando Ruiz, one of Archie Comics' best pencilist, the Archie Comics series, the best penciler, he wanted to do his own series. This one doesn't even have a publisher, so this was released independent. And for the longest time, for those who actually bought the first issue, they're all still waiting for the second issue. So we're all expecting them to actually finally release, the second issue. Who knows when is it going to come out? The New 52 War of Men. Out of all the New 52 series that the DC Comics has put out, I'm pretty surprised that War of Men is they did one that isn't superhero. It's not to say that like DC all they do is superhero. There's been a lot of exceptions I just can't explain right now. But Men at War. Why did I say War of Men? Men at War. Okay. I haven't got into the series, but I thought it was pretty interesting that since I came from a military family, there's a comic book series just based on how heroic and science fiction / fantasy like can be in the mix. The very first issue of Street Fighter II, the comic book series. What's really interesting about this comic book issue is that like straight from the get-go, it's trying to introduce comic book readers to the video game series. And they really did shove it up the ass because, they showed each of the characters' biography at the bottom of each page. From Guile, Zangief, to Dalsim. Oh, man. From beginning to end, you have a character biography from a 2-page spread. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, all right. And also, I remember I grew up with this one. The Udon Comics Street Fighter that was published all the way in Canada. I gotta say, out of all the Street Fighter comic book / manga, this is actually my favorite just because the rendering is phenomenal. I mean, I just really like the way the effects works when it comes to whenever there's an action and stuff. I'm surprised that Marvel and DC hasn't done stuff like this. Ooh, take a look at that effects, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure they've done that, but I don't see that in the New 52 or the modern-day Marvel stuff. I had to get this one because this one is absolutely nostalgic for me when comic books used to be sold where I was growing up. Wolverine. Whew! This one took me from hell and back, but, I thought it was going to be worth the trip trying to get back to this comic book series because this is the exact same issue that I found so many years ago. But then later on, I just realized how over-rendered, each of the drawings are. I mean, take a look at the shading. I mean, I'm pretty sure that back in the early 90s, they didn't have, Photoshop to actually contrast detailing from light to darkness. But, oh, man, somebody should tell the pencilist and the inker that this is not black and white art. And it just doesn't look right. And also, one more thing. I really hate it when comic books does this. At the time, it used to be so popular and so appealing, but when when you're reading from left to right, page after page, you stumble across this. Yeah, I really hate it when comic books actually do this. Pulling off the page shit that's been folded. It just looks like it's pornography. Just imagine if your mother steps right in and you're reading it sideways, and then they just automatically say, that better not be fucking porn. No, Mom, it's a comic book, I swear. Sorry. It was probably worth trying to find it, find that copy, but it just didn't age well for me. The New 52, Green Lantern, New Guardians. It's okay. I try to be a Green Lantern fan because it was pretty interesting, and Green Lantern has a historic impact to the comic book industry. But I don't know. It's just like they always change the superhero who's wearing the ring and the costume, and I don't know. I just can't get into like what has been established. I mean, like if you know Batman, you know Bruce Wayne. The character establishment is last from beginning of the comic book line all the way to this very day, where that is still being sold. But I don't know. Green Lantern keeps changing personalities every time they have a different continuity with the character, especially the fucking movie. Don't watch that. All right, next one. The New 52, Death in the Family. All right, you probably heard Batman over and over again, and I'm telling you right now, the Batman comic book series is so much better than all the Batman movies. Not every single issue is better than all the Batman movies. There are plenty enough that are pretty bad, but the New 52 Batman, if there's a reason to get into comic books, just read the New 52, because the New 52's whole purpose is to try to introduce new DC fans to get into the DC universe. And I hate to do this, but I really got to show you this. You know, if you got into the series before watching this video, you know that Joker got the doll maker to cut off his face, and Joker approved of it. Guess what? He fucking did that with Harley Quinn. Oh, if you really want to see what happens in the, the Harley Quinn, you got to see what happens in the next issue. I won't say anything. Brutally disgusting, but it's just like it matches the story. Glad they didn't show it. This one I really needed to get because I'm really surprised that Image Comics, you know, the guys who were, you know, the comic book industry that is most known for releasing Spawn, The Walking Dead, New Blood, and the rest, I just can't believe it. They got hold of Spider-Man and made a comic book issue out of it. How the fuck did you make a Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man comic book without Marvel's publishing? There's no Marvel's publishing, no matter wherever I turn the page. But I will have to say that this was better than the normal '90s comics that we normally get because it's just quite appealing, and it told a much better story than the average '90s comic. I'm a huge fan of the '90s comics, but I must admit that their drawing style and their storytelling is really aged terribly. Now this one I really wanted to get out of curiosity. If you can read upside down, it says Sleepwalk. Why did they do that? I don't know. Comic books, they just like to do all these kind of weird stuff just to grab some appeal. I couldn't get into this comic book series, sorry. I didn't understand what the heck was going on with this comic book. Another Marvel comic book, Planet Red Hulk. I don't get it. Sorry. I mean, like, I try to get it. I understand Planet Hulk, but Planet Red Hulk, maybe it's because I missed a couple of issues, but I just don't understand what was going on in this comic book series. At first, you thought that he was a gladiator lord, and then later on, it just jumped to like world domination or something. I don't know. My mind was completely, crazy when I was trying to follow a story just like that. Here's something interesting: Spider-Girl. And the only reason why I got this copy was because I really want to see Venom, and anything that has symbiotes in it. I just have a guilty pleasure with them. I'm sorry. I love symbiotes. That's the reason why I became a Spider-Man fan back in the '90s. What else can I say? You get what you paid for. Oh, and they also have Green Goblin in this one, too. Cool. Okay, the next one. I got Danger Girl and the Army of Darkness. I don't know a single thing about Danger Girl, but I'll tell you one thing. I have a love for Ash Williams. And for those who don't know, he's the dude that has been in movies like Evil Dead 2, and the Army of Darkness, which is actually my favorite movie of the trilogy. And it was pretty cool that that franchise got its own comic book adaptation, but I have absolutely no appeal to get into the Danger Girl series, even though, the makers of the series and the comic book series of Danger Girl and Army of Darkness try to have the same audience, but it just didn't work for me, sorry. Probably the worst comic book that I have in my collection, and I only got this just because I need to remind myself how not to draw. This is the big one. Because you saw some of those comic book issues that I said that it had a pretty bad story and the art doesn't age well. This is probably the worst comic book artist ever, and he won millions of dollars just because the way he draws his figures and the way he made his rendering and the way they did bad storytelling. It was popular back then, but now when you type out his name on the Google search, you will see how much he's been bashed as one of the worst comic book artists ever, and that critical acclaim does deserve that. Of all the bashing in the world that this artist has ever got, he deserved it. He deserved every negative reception ever. It's Rob Liefeld, and this is his New Blood series. Can't you believe this sold millions? I mean, seriously. Take a look at this. Does this look anything appealing to you? Here's the thing I hate about Rob Liefeld. Okay, everybody in the comic book industry hates this guy now. Because this guy doesn't even know how to be consistent with his fucking figures. Seriously. I mean, like, you know, when you show this to any of my cartoonist teachers, they'll be baffled at the way he draws. Oh, how unappealing is that? Look at this. The perspective is completely wrong. The guy is too big, even though he's quite closer. And the guy in the bike, he's probably in the same, you know, level in the perspective. You know, the same distance towards each other, and it's way too small in comparison to the size of this guy. And I know that this guy can't be bigger than the Hulk and the Thing combined. Oh man, just wait until you see this. Let me show you. Probably one of the most baffled drawings ever. And this guy still has a comic book career to this day. Yes, regurgitate everybody. This is bad art. Heck, you can probably draw this. You can probably have your own drawing style and become much better than this guy. Rob Liefeld, fuck you. Alright, now that's done with the comic book stuff because, you know, I just grabbed those out of curiosity and, you know, nostalgic purposes. Now, let's get into the graphic novels because I'm a huge graphic novel fan. And these are the graphic novels that inspired me to probably become a graphic novelist one day. Oh man, let's get down to one of the best, one of the most interesting graphic novel series, but it's made by one of my favorite graphic novelists of all time, Charles Burns. And this is his series, The X-Outs. Well, The X-Out came first, and then the sequel, The Hive, which recently came out last year. Oh man, even though the story is kind of slow and it's kind of like Yellow Submarine, you have to get invested with the atmosphere to fully understand what's going on. But man, you know, finally seeing him to do like color in his art, because this guy is most known for his black and white art. Oh man, taking a look at his you know, his color and rendering, it's amazing. I just really like how nerve-wracking sometimes the tone of the story becomes. It's really hard to judge which one do I like better, because right now he's currently working on the third installment of this trilogy, and I so can't wait to finally see that finally been released, because, you know, this one took quite a long time to make the sequel, even though it's not even close to 200 pages. But anyway, I can see that there's a lot of hard work and heart into this graphic novel series. Now, this one is something I recommend to all my female audiences right out there, because this one sparkles on, like, you know, teenage growth, the hardships of friendship, and the social dysfunction of having lack of social skills or appeal. Here it is, Anya's Ghost. One of my favorite graphic novels that was released last year, and I strongly recommend to T. McBee to finally get into this, because all it is just like finally a girl that was having a really bad, miserable time. Her number one crush has been taken by the hottest girl in the school, and then finally her life changed when she fell into a well, and then have like a ghost that actually stayed connected with her, and then decided to follow her, and then improved her life by giving her suggestions, cheating on tests, and so much more. And, you know, from the beginning to end, it was really lighthearted, and then towards the end, It is incredibly thrilling, but I won't tell you what. I won't spoil you anything. It's a strong recommendation to get into Vera Broskov, and she's not known for being a graphic novelist. She's known for being the storyboard artist for that movie Coraline, and that's quite a reception where she's coming from storyboard artists to graphic novelists. So I strongly recommend to get this copy if you're really into trying to fit. If you can actually relate to being an outcast and then trying to improve your life from beginning to end. Next one, my favorite graphic novel series, all into one. It's Jeff Smith's Bone. Look how huge this graphic novel is. We are talking from 1991 to when the series started to all the way to, I believe it was 2005 or 2006 when the final installment of the graphic novel series was been released. This is many years of work all into one. Well, I got the black and white edition, which I find very suitable for, black and line art, and actually understand how to, render quite as good as, Jeff Smith. But this is epic. I mean, like, this is Lord of the Rings before Lord of the Rings hit movie theaters, and I can see where Jeff Smith got his inspiration from. All those fantasy novels that he grew up with, and then he just decided to draw them out of his favorite characters that he kept drawing ever since he was a little boy. Bone and Phony Bone and Smiley Bone. Yeah, this is phenomenal. I mean, like, when I first time ever when I finished this from beginning to end, it was just like the most satisfying experience ever. This is the reason why I am a huge fan of graphic novels today. So this is a graphic novel series that are good for young audiences, and also, not to mention, all audience around the world. I mean, of all ages, audiences around the world, except for those who can't speak English, that that can't read English. But not to offend any of you guys. But anyway, here it is, the Amulet series. Well, I haven't got all of them, but I only got a total of like 3 volumes. It is a pretty interesting series, considering that the fact that it's about a girl and her brother that's moved into this house, and then instantly became like Narnia, except it's like much more deadier and it's more steampunky a little. You can say it's fantasy and steampunk combined into one, but it is a pretty interesting series that just keeps throwing in like interesting twists. Really phenomenal rendering, even though the artwork is pretty average. It's cartoony style. What can you expect? And I also absolutely like how imaginative and how grasping the world really is. So it's a recommendation for all ages, for those who really like some high fantasy and steampunk. All right, here's a graphic novel published by Vertigo Comics, one of my favorite comic book companies of all time. American Vampire. What's really interesting is that Stephen King is involved with this one as the writer, and it's really interesting to see a huge novelist name to finally make a graphic novel like this. American Vampire. Ooh, this is just a good series. I can't say any more of it because basically, if I give you the premise, it will spoil the rest. Here's something interesting: the Invincible Iron Man series. Well, I wouldn't count this as graphic novels because they were adapted from comic books into essentials. Pretty good. I mean, like, it got me more into Iron Man in general, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Iron Man 3 tomorrow before I leave Japan. But anyway, this this comic book series, The Invincible Iron Man, it's pretty interesting. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it's basically trying to be kind of like the movies a little more than the original counterparts of the comic book series. But anyway, I have no complaints. American Terrorist. I have not finished it yet because, with this workload that we have and all that stuff. But judging by the art, it looks completely psychological, political, and all the rest. I mean, like, everybody in my school kept recommending me getting this graphic novel. And surprisingly enough, we were doing a raffle draw because one of my classmates, they had 2 copies of this. And then they said they would have liked to give it away, but you have to get the right raffle draw. And surprise, surprise, I got the right number, and I got this. So I got this for free. So Why haven't I read this yet, even though this is for free? Alright, here's an interesting one. Channel Zero. Really dramatic. I gotta say that the rendering, even though it's too black, because, you know, the guy is just obsessed with inks and lights and shadows and all that stuff, I have not finished it yet. I'm being honest with you, but judging from the first 2 chapters that I just read, this is really an interesting series. If only if I read more of it, I can tell you what I know of it, but sorry. But this thing was in the shelves everywhere wherever I go to, Barnes & Noble and all that stuff. And I just couldn't help myself but to buy it because it looked pretty interesting. Okay, here's one of my favorite comic book series ever, published by Vertigo Comics, aka one of my favorite comic book companies of all time, and their series, Fables. Oh man, this is Shrek before. Now, actually, I'm lying. This is not Shrek, but you know, take the formula of Shrek, but putting it in the real world, like all the fantasy creatures and established characters like Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, the Big Bad Wolf, all put into reality, and they all are into this crime drama and this upcoming post-apocalyptic event that's soon to become. I have not got far with the series. I only got far with these comic books, but man, this is probably one of the best reads I've ever had because it's suspenseful, it's unpredictable at best, and also I really like the fact that the artwork is fucking gorgeous. I mean like right from the cover. That's not even the best part. You also got like hardcore rendering, and it's really hard. It's modern, but at the same time it feels like classic drawings like Jack Kirby. Yeah, pretty interesting. You can never see this coming a mile away being this good. Don't be confused with it as Fable from, you know, Peter Molyneux's fucking video game series. Just think of it as Fables with the, you know, with the S at the end. Birds of Prey. You know, this is probably DC's most feminist comic book series they ever published. I have not got far with this, but I've got to say, Black Canary, she is one badass bitch. Alright, now here's one. The New 52 Detective Comics. Also partake in the same exact series, New 52 Batman. Face of Death, this basically just explains how the Joker got his face caught off. And, you know, let me show you one of the most iconic splash pages that we've ever had in this generation of comic books. Un momento, por favor. We're almost there. God damn it. Where is that? Oh. Prepare to be horrified for those who don't know what's coming up next. Joker's fucking face stapled on the wall. You have scarred me by a milestone, Joker, for actually accepting the doll maker to chop that flesh of your face just to remove it. But, as amazing as that comic book was, that comic book essential was, I still have to go for the Court of Owls, the Batman New 52, just because it was really cool to see, like, you know, foot soldiers, but more murderous and actually more serious. And also, these guys are really humanoid owls in costume and able to fly and became a humongously big threat to Gotham City. Oh man, I can't even describe how, you know, thrilling this comic book series really was. But you have to read this comic book series, this comic book story arc first before you get to Death in the Family, which is was the last big story arc. I haven't gotten to the New 52 Batman recently, just because I don't have time to read comic books. So for those who are watching this, please write down in the comic section what is exactly the new story arc that's partaking in the New 52 Batman, because let me tell you, my friends, this is probably the best Batman comic book series, one of the best comic book Batman runs ever. I bought this one for nostalgic purposes, and it's just because this one was just, you know, being a Spider-Man fan back in my high school years. It is Ultimate Spider-Man. Probably one of my favorite Spider-Man incarnations ever. And it's really cool that they took the Clone Saga story arc, their own partake of the Clone Saga story arc. Because let's be honest here, the Clone Saga from Spider-Man in the 90s was okay at best. But, you know, they totally redeem itself by trying to take an interesting concept from that story arc and made it much more better. It's more like a remake because, you know, but they also made a lot of changes. Like, for example, we got female Peter Parker who became female Spider-Man. We also got a clone clone Peter Parker that actually has 4 arms. And we also got Scorpion, who's actually also who's actually also Peter Parker in that suit. So, yeah, if that doesn't sound interesting, what will? Now, here's one of my favorite comic book series ever, just because I really I grew up from the cartoons it was based on, but you know, discovering that it was based on a comic book, oh man, you know, the comic book series was just so good. I just couldn't go back to the 1987 TV series, which is known as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic books. This is IDW's you know, incarnation and their run why am I saying Spider-Man? Of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And, you know, don't be afraid because Eastman and Laird are also involved with the series. You know, IDW just did a fantastic job of just reuniting the original creators of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and finally making something unique by bringing back the old magic of the comic book series that, you know, I discovered sold those many years ago. And speaking of growing up with comic books that I grew up with when I discovered it, let's just get to the nitty-gritty. Man, this is heavy because we're talking about the original 1984 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Eastman and Laird. Oh man, IDW, man, thank you so much for actually re-releasing and reprinting the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book. Man, you know, for independent comic books, for starting out as an independent comic book series, the rendering, oh man, it's so atmospheric, so grim and gruesome, and I just really like the fact that like this is just like watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first movie all over again, but made it much more adult, much more exciting, much more thrilling, much more impactful. There's like so many special moments in these comic book series that I will always cherish in my heart. And you know, just seeing the essentials. I got like Volume 3, which is the latest one. Oh man, it was just like a fucking steal for me. You can actually sell this for only like $100, and I still would buy it. All right, here's something interesting. Incognito. You know, like I said, I really want to buy comic books back in whenever I get a hands on it. And then when I was in Japan, there were very few comic books and much more manga in the market. And whenever there's a graphic novel like this one that's been released on shelves, I couldn't help myself but to buy it. Oh my goodness, Incognito. What can I say? This is a pretty interesting take on, you know, the villain side of the story and seeing how much he really despises and hates the world. And he just smites it just for the sake of taking revenge, and how much he really despises being ridiculed for all the successes that everybody is getting, but he's not getting in his personal life. So he's doing, you know, himself a favor by making his life a lot better. It's psychological, quite political, and also it's pretty good character study if you really want to make a good, interesting villain. So if you're really interested in creating your own villains and all that stuff, try checking this out. You will probably learn much more about being a villain than you ever did before from movies and past comic books and video games altogether. This one here, it almost reminded me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just because I really like the fact that, like, you know, anthropomorphic creatures that are bigger than life itself, and then they have all these superpowers and stuff. Here it is. Elephant Men. Now, you can pretty much see that, like, you know, none of these guys are elephants. Just, there's only been, like, only a few characters that are actually mammoth-like, you know, anthropomorphic animals. But what I really, really love about this series is the fact that, like, oh man, it's just like having the mutation on Africa to actually, I think it was a mutation or an experiment. Yeah, it's an experiment that somehow made humanoid animals, and then somehow they grew intelligence and everything else. That and then they learned how to adapt from languages. They actually started fighting a war against them and humans. This is the backstory of the series, mind you, and this is the series was like based on like years, much more years after the war, and it's up to them to try to fit in society while society has not evolved from accepting their species and their race, even though they tried the best to actually try to fit in society by saving human lives, trying to, and also having a hard time trying to stick to being fit into society or actually take revenge and overthrow humanity as obsolete. Doesn't that sound interesting to you? I don't know, but IDW, thank you for actually releasing this stuff. Wait, did I say IDW? I mean, Jesus, why am I getting these comic book companies all mixed up? It's not IDW, it's Image Comics. And, if you really want to make your own comic book series, Image is pretty much the where it goes. And the only thing that matters is actually getting your copies of comic books to be sold. So good luck with that. All right, now this one here, I just like because of the art, and the story is really, it's just hard to follow because it has a really slow pace considering that it's this much a page of a graphic novel series. But it's Dave McKean's Cages. I don't even know what to say because I read this multiple times and I can't tell if it's a thriller, is it a drama, is it a crime? I don't know. But the artwork, oh my god. Really phenomenal. And I just can't believe Dark Horse Comics picked up somebody like Dave McKean to actually show his artwork out to the public. And he truly delivered. It's just that I personally would like to make the story a little better than what was offered here because, sometimes it gets, the story turns to non-linear and sometimes you can't tell if it's a side plot or an actual plot. And sometimes the story doesn't go anywhere after 5 pages and so many panels, reading after reading after reading. Oh, man. But it's just purely because of the artwork. It's just an automatic steal. I don't know. I'm going to try to read this one more time and see if I can put this in my top 10 favorite graphic novels ever, because that list is soon to be coming out soon. This is not a comic book series or a graphic novel. It's a comic strip. And I had to get it just because I am absolutely a huge fan of it. And this is the complete collection of Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, this is quite heavy. Yeah, the heaviest book that I have in my collection. And this one has all the essentials. My father has been collecting Calvin and Hobbes way before I was born. But, just getting this just for myself, it's just worth the collection. Now, Calvin and Hobbes, if you're not into the series, then I question, how are you still alive? Then I question, how are you still being able to read? It's probably one of the most precious and most delightful aspects in life. Just take like 5 minutes of your life and just read as much Calvin and Hobbes as you can get within that time limit, because it is just that gorgeous. It is just that beautiful, insightful, intelligent, and I don't know. It just appeals to everybody at all ages. If you're very young, you can just understand how Calvin is feeling for having so much imagination, and then when you're old, you can reflect back as a kid that wonders a lot. Plus, you have so many things that you can that comes up in your head that only adults thinks of. And I just love Calvin, but I like Hobbes better for being like, much more fun than Calvin. Even though he is he is a stuffed tiger that only moves in Calvin's imagination, as we might think. I mean, it's always been a debate whether if Hobbes really is alive or just Calvin's imagination. Either way, it's just, I don't know. I just gotta buy the whole thing, and I praise Bill Watterson for actually releasing this, even though he retired when I was 6 years old, and reading that last panel of Calvin and Hobbes, the very last strip of Calvin and Hobbes just really gives me a tear in my eye because it is just that beautiful. Now, this one here is actually one of my favorite comic book series of all time, just because it's just like The Crow mixed with Batman, mixed with Spawn, all into one, and it's simply Dark Horse Comics, The Darkness. This is this is like one of its big collections here. The Darkness came out when the comic book crash happened in 1996, and took a huge risk by finally releasing a new comic book series right after the crash started, and then they started with a very damaged market, and still to this day, Marvel Comics is still trying to be on repair, and they were relying on Hollywood studios to make the grossing as up, even though the comic book are not as sold as big as they were back in the 80s, the 90s, and the 70s. But man, The Darkness is really psychological. If you play the video game The Darkness 1 and 2 on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, you know what the series is about. But it may be a little more, but when you read the comic book series, it may be a little more God of War-ish, but it's more into Spawn a little. I just can't tell, because I really like the fact that, like, okay, it's quite sexist for the sake that, like, the guy who's playing as the Darkness is being a complete womanizer, and then you have all these women, both heroines and villainesses, being, big bobies, because, to say that it is the 90s. I don't really focus on that, even though the comic book industry at that point in time was really obsessed with oversaturating female characters like that. But I just really like the fact that the Darkness had to struggle, like, going through, like, his evolution from trying to be a normal human being. I mean, like a gangster, a mob gangster, and trying to be successful at it. And then later on, he got betrayed, and then he can fulfill his redemption by having all these powers, these dark beings coming out of his body, and he's able to have full control of them, and they can obey his full command with all those creatures coming out of his back. It's just brutally fun, both metaphorically and literally. Oh man, it's just like, I just like the fact that this comic book series, oh man, this heavy piece of collection here, just reflect back to, like, all the things I missed when I was very young in the 90s. Like I said, come on guys, I'm a comic book fan, but I just had to get this collection, just because this brings me back to my first days of being a comic book fan. Alright, this is Spider-Man, The Vengeance of Venom. What this comic book issue is from Todd McFarlane's comic book days, from, the way early 90s and late 80s to the days when Carnage was first introduced. Oh man, these days of having Venom and Carnage and Spider-Man going at each other three-way. Oh man, it does not age well, mind you. But I just absolutely love the fact that the nostalgia factor is just so through the roof. I mean, like, I grasp myself as a 5-year-old, just watching page after page, seeing all this brutality and violence and action happening over and over again, from panel to panel, page after page, issue after issue. Oh man, how could you not be excited over this when you were a kid? Unless you kindly maybe just overlook comic books in general. But man, oh man, even though a lot of people will really think that, like, Carnage and Venom have no personality, I quite disagree. Mainly because I'm just saying that because I grew up with these characters. But man, I just absolutely love coming back to them, and then finally have all the issues that I really wanted to get all into one. The only thing I'm still looking for is Maximum Carnage collection, and then that will be like my full satisfactory of collecting Spider-Man. until I get Ultimate Comic Spider-Man, all the collections that it also have to offer. So if I have Ultimate Spider-Man collection and also Maximum Carnage, then I will not buy another Spider-Man comic book issue because, that's all my Spider-Man satisfactory and all my Spider-Man needs that I really need. Pop question. Who remembers this? Fire it up! Fire it up! Fire it up! Come on, people. It is actually one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And I got the special edition of this comic book that the movie was based on. Alright, it's The Crow! Oh, man! James O'Barr. You are a genius for bringing so much darkness and maturity in the comic book industry from the mid '80s. Oh man! And what makes this special edition so special is the fact that there are some panels and drawings that James O'Barr made so many years ago that does not age well. And guess what? He came back to the series and redrew them. Oh man! I mean, there are some pages that you can tell that was came from straight from the '80s because of the style and the way these lines are structured and the way artists inked them, because these were the days before Photoshop was invented. But then later on, he started to come back to it, and then man, you can see James O'Barr's drawing style to be significantly improved from when he started the series all those many years ago. And, it's a gothic story. Oh, man. I wouldn't say this thing popularized goth because goth started back in, the late 70s and early 80s. But, man, this one was extremely popular with the goths. And, when the goth movement was so popular back in the 90s. Now, you already saw me getting over crazy on Bone, right? Well, James Smith has done another graphic novel series after Bone. Well, is it a graphic novel series or just a standalone one graphic novel? Oh, anyway, here it is. Razzle. Oh, man. Talk about an action crime thriller. So suspenseful and pretty impressively. His artwork is really improved. I mean, you can tell that this is Jeff Smith's artwork when you take a look at how he designed Rose from Bone and all the human figures that are not the Bone characters. But man, I mean, I just really like how Jeff Smith really jumped from one genre to another to, something this insane. Oh man, this is such a fun read, and you gotta read it yourself to actually know how talented Jeff Smith really is. Okay, now this one here I also had to buy out of just pure nostalgic reasons. The best comic book crossover ever happened. And this is saying a lot considering that there has been a lot of comic book crossovers and also a lot of superhero tie-ins. But this ain't superhero. These are movie monsters that are, fighting against each other, and it became its own universe and its own series. It is the Alien vs. Predator series. Dark Horse Comics. Okay, collections and essentials. They're really popular in the comic book industry. Just so they can get everybody into the comic book industry from all the things that they missed all those many years ago. But the omnibus. Oh man, this goes back to the days when Sergeant Machiko, first witnessed the invasion of the aliens, and then the Predators started coming in to protect their own planet while trying to hold grudge against the human beings. So this is a three-way war. And what's even better is that, the comic book series had to be on hiatus for, nearly decades, almost a decade later. But this was full comic book satisfactory for me when they came back to the series and then finally released the three World War. Sorry, I can't remember all these names because considering that I have so many graphic novels and comic books here. The Three World War. Oh man, establishing that there are more evil predators that are controlling the the xenomorphs, and then use them against their advantages. Oh man, this became an interesting war that this series has taken, because the Colonial Marines are teamed up with the Predators against the evil Predators that have the xenomorphs on their side. This was a phenomenal conclusion, but it left us with a cliffhanger, promising us that there's going to be much more of this. So what's taking them so long to finally release something that was released after the World War? Oh man, fucking fantastic. I mean, this is the reason why I'm a comic book fan. Even though I can probably get nerdy, and there are a lot of comic book fans that are completely dissatisfied, that are really hard to satisfy. Being attached to probably a series, and then still have a hold on to it, and then years later coming back to it, you come up with something like this. That's something that movie sequels and most video game sequels can't hold up to this very day. Now, this is the last superhero related comic book / graphic novel / essentials that I have in this collection. But I had to save the best for last. My favorite superhero of all time, Animal Man. It's really interesting to see a superhero genre mixed with horror in general, because this is where things really got really disturbing, out of this world. It's fantasy, science fiction, superhero, and horror all mixed into one. It's just like you get like moments like these where you're entering like a world where demons exist, and then later on they're all trying to chase out your family and all that stuff. That's the reason why I like Animal Man amongst all the superheroes, because he's a family man. He doesn't have just a girlfriend and a damsel in distress. He has a wife and a family, 2 children. Oh man, it's just like that's what makes the stakes of being a superhero much more engaging. And then you get like moments like these where they get so fucking brutal that words cannot describe how amazing this artwork is. If you want something really suspenseful, read this in the dark and tell me you didn't have any chills coming down your spine. Alright, now remember when I said one of my favorite graphic novelists is currently working on a trilogy series? Well, this is the one thing that he's most known for, Black Hole. It is similar to The Hive and the X'd Out. Charles Burns. Sorry, I forgot to name his name. Charles Burns, one of my favorite graphic novels ever. Black Hole. Imaginative. This is where, I think this is where his first take of, X'd Out and Hive entering another dimension and seeing all these weird creatures first started. This one here is so suspenseful. You don't even know what the hell is going on, and then later on, when you get to the end, huge plot twist. And it's really phenomenal that a graphic novel really pulled something this creative. No way a movie or a television series would pull off something like this. It has to take a fucking genius and a fucking artist and a fucking good storyteller all into one to finally release something this good. And I know that I keep praising this stuff every time I talk about graphic novels and talk about animation, cartoons, and comic strips, whatever, on the Legit Animation Awards and my animation reviews. I always keep mentioning this. My God himself, he is Craig Thompson. Yes, it's going to be a shame that I have to leave this behind because I can't carry all this stuff back at home, but I will still cherish all those wonderful memories I have with blankets, because this is just so fucking beautiful. One of the best romantic stories I've ever seen. Best autobiographical story I've ever read. And oh my goodness, page after page. Go ahead and watch my reviews. You'll see why I gave this game a 7 fingers out of 5, because this is such a phenomenal book, phenomenal story, and it's something that touches me in my soul, in my heart, because nothing comes this close to being as relatable. But the hardest part is to actually decide which is better, because I'm soon going to review this one day. Habibi. Oh! It's incredibly mature, incredibly dark, and it had to take all those risks. Craig Thompson had to take all those risks to actually tell us a really, really touching story. I am not going to show you any of the comic book pages here because I'm going to save that to the review. And some of the images that are drawn here, it's really, it's really disturbing for the ones who are weak at heart. But this is a phenomenal love story that really shows what it means to actually, you know, have that edge of, has that grasp that you, both of you two are existing in this world, and you are soon to collide with each other once again. I mean, Nadula and Zam, the main characters here, they had to start from orphans, and then, Zam was a baby, and then Dudula, being 7 years old, she escaped as a slave, grabbed the baby, and then ran off and took care of him in the fucking desert. And then, as they grow up, they couldn't handle each other's sexuality because there's no female or male role model for them because they were growing up together. And oh man, the risk they had to take to actually had to make them survive. It was a non-linear story that keeps going back and forth because, oh man, it's just like, at first you thought that, this is the reason why they separated, but no, it goes back to a flashback and show much more of the story of like how it was not how they were separated, but then this is how they separated, and it keeps going back to like saying that is not how they separated. This is how they got separated, and it's at the point where you're at the middle of the story, and then you finally got the full answer to how they got separated. And I can't spoil a single thing of it. I keep praising and telling you guys to get this graphic novel because if Blankets really touched you emotionally and spiritually, this one will probably be in second hand as being something that will touch your soul. And there are times where I was so fucking scared to switch the page. I never had that emotion before where I was so nervous to change the page because it was going to break my fucking heart if I see something that tragic. But being Craig Thompson, the genius himself, he knew how to make a story, well, unlike any other. No way that this graphic novel is ever going to be adapted to a movie or a television series or a mini-series or a cartoon. Yeah, this is the reason why I still am into the graphic novel market, and I'm always going on websites and reviews just to see what else is in store for graphic novels. And one of these days we might see something this good. I also got Craig Thompson's other works. I got all Craig Thompson's collection, but let's get down to his weakest work. This one is Carnet de Voyage. This is his autobiographical trip to, Europe. And all it is just like his reports on vacations and all that stuff, and how was he doing after, writing Blankets. At the same time, I have mixed feelings with it. At one part, you're wondering how did Craig Thompson continue his life after creating Blankets. And then at the second time, he's telling us stories that doesn't really interest us. I mean, like, there are some parts in your life that you don't really need to tell. Like, in Blankets, he needed to tell everything to make it create so much sympathy and make everybody feel sorry for him. And he succeeded by making just everybody so emotionally attached to his story. But then you came up with this, and then there's no story. I'm sorry, Craig Thompson, you are my god, but you gotta admit, I gotta to tell you the truth, this is not that good. But let's get down to Craig Thompson's first work, and this has actually showed what he is capable of. And I'm also gonna review this one day. This one's called Goodbye Chucky Rice. Oh man, this is before he knew how to do figures and make his own human characters and establish all this stuff. But this is the time when he was making all these anthropomorphic characters, cartoon characters, mind you, and all he's doing is just showing his inking skills and how much a tragic love story could possibly be. This is a precursor to Blankets, and I really like the fact that, we got these two animal characters that are actually lovers, even though they're very young. They're just in love with each other. It's so beautiful, it's so heartwarming. It's tragic all in one. Story can get confusing, I must admit. Craig Thompson really did improve from Blankets, but overall, if you really want to see how the Craig Thompson first started, check out his 1999 release on Goodbye Chucky Rice. How did I forget the first a graphic novel that has been established as a graphic novel. It is Will Eisner's A Contract with God, the trilogy. Well, the first The Contract with God was actually the first known graphic novel. Heck, if you don't know Will Eisner, how do you know what the heck is the Academy Awards for comic books? The Will Eisner Award. This guy, oh well, his handwriting is similar to Disney's, but this guy, he's most known for making the Spirit comic book series, but you know, he should be known for being like the innovator of graphic novels and also innovating the graphic novel market from differentiating, you know, comic book panels from comic strips and comic books and then just make its own medium. Pardon me. Um, oh man, all it is this is kind of like how like Craig Thompson got his inspiration from, where you know, while Craig Thompson's talking his life about being how hard it is to be a Christian in a Christian conservative world, this one here is like how hard it is to become a Jew. And, you know, Will Eisner admits that some stories are actually true and some stories are actually false. Well, oh man, it's really emotional, and it has a special place in everybody's hearts who actually grew up reading this phenomenal piece of work and actually got a chance to stand up and tell everybody that comic books and comic strips doesn't really need to be this formulaic where you have to have a guy in a cape or a monster or a crime thriller. You can actually tell your own stories that, you know, even novelists would actually like to put their time and effort through. But Will Eisner, man, I really wish that this guy was alive today so we can actually have more interviews on this guy's amazing work. I mean, like, you know, admittedly, his hatching and his ink work kind of look like you know, hairlines a little, but those were the biggest disadvantages of having black and white artwork. And you know, all Will Eisner could possibly do was just like try to render it and try to make his objects look like the objects that he's trying to represent. And you know, it's just like after all those many years of like trying to tell what his life is like being a Jew, man, this is totally inspirational. And you know, I can probably put Will Eisner as probably one of my favorite comic book artists, graphic novelists, and cartoonists ever. Oh man. Well, that's pretty much all the that's pretty much all the graphic novels and comic books that I have in my collection. The reason why I'm making this video is to remind myself that I left all this stuff here in storage, and I also want to show you guys what I've been collecting since I arrived here in America. So, thanks everybody for watching this video, and please keep in mind that I will be coming back to Japan. It's going to be really hard for me to get used to the jet lag, but don't worry. I will be starting gaming in the 90s and finally doing an episode of the Butchow Radio podcast and much more episodes of the Legit Animation podcast. So Team McBee, Almuya, and everybody else, get ready because Gexup is back in action for only 4 months. So with only 4 months to spare, we can possibly finish gaming in the 90s once and for all. And then finally release my top 10 favorite video games of all time. Something that you guys have been waiting for the longest time. So thank you for all your support. Thank you for coming to the comments and this website, checking up all of our stuff in our posts and our threads. You know, thank you very much. So be on the lookout till when I come back. Hey, maybe if more people actually like this collection video, maybe when I get back home, I can do a collection video of all the consoles that I own and stuff. Well, not exactly own. The last thing I want to do is make it extremely time-consuming at the fact that like it will slow me down from all the, you know, videos I really need to finish. But with that out of the way, you know, let me know if you guys really want to see more collection videos like this. Till then, I'll see you guys next time here on itstale.time.net. Thank you.